I'm gonna give you the top 5 things that you've gotta focus on when you're preparing an Olympic weightlifter for a major competition, and we're gonna start right now. What's up everybody, it's Dane Miller from GarageStrength.com. If this is your first time to the channel and you're interested in becoming an explosive freak, maybe you're a coach and you wanna get better at coaching, make sure that you like, you subscribe, and you ring that notification bell so we can help you get better at your job. All right, so we're down here in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, and we're about to leave to go to compete at the Senior Pan American Championships in 2021. And so I've got Haley Reichert, she's about to compete in the 49 kilo weight class. And one of the big things that I've learned throughout the years is that you've got to have a plan. I used to go to big meets and I would just sort of free for all. It was like, all right, well, this is what we're gonna do. I'd have an idea in my head, but I wouldn't really lay out that game plan. And as I got older and a little bit more mature and I started to study other really good coaches, I got to spend time around Piros Dimas, 3-time Olympic champion, 4-time Olympic medalist, spend time with Mike Catone and other elite coaches that are coaching at that international level in the United States. I started to figure out, hey, it's just like throwing. If I want to have a game plan, if I want my athletes to do really, really well, and for me to have a little bit less stress, and for my athletes to have a little bit less stress, I've got to have a freaking game plan. I've got to sit there and say, all right, this is that step-by-step process that we're going to go through. So now we're going to go into those top 5 aspects that you need to have when you're preparing for a major competition. So that first key factor is that you've got to understand, what are your goals? A lot of coaches go to meets and they don't even talk to their athletes about what's their athlete's goals. What are their own personal goals for their athlete? How do they foresee this meet becoming a success? And I think that that's the most important aspect here, is that you've got to define what is success for this specific meet. Is it going to be, just make your lifts? Is it going to be a specific PR? Is it going to be a specific total? Is it going to be bring home a whole bunch of medals? Whatever it is that is going to make your athlete happy and it's going to make you happy as a coach as well, most importantly the athlete, you have to establish what those goals are going to be. And I think that that's a huge key factor, is that when you can sit down with your athlete, you discuss your goals 16 weeks out ahead of time. Then you can discuss your goals again 8 weeks out. Now you discuss your goals, maybe it's 3-4 weeks out from competition. And then when you're actually at the venue, you sort of visualize what those goals are going to be. You walk them through that step-by-step process, and that's going to help them see that those goals are in reach. And it's also going to remind you, the coach, like, hey, I've got to focus on these specific goals. It's not about my ego. It's not about me beating this coach. It's about the athlete and what the athlete is capable of doing and what the athlete's goals are. So that's that first key step. Establish those goals early on and continuously hone in on what those exact goals are so that you can build that big relationship with your athlete towards goal setting. That second key factor is to know where their body weight is at. If we're talking about an elite athlete or even an athlete that's going to a local meet, you need to pull out as many stressors as possible. So you've got to understand, where is their body weight in relation to their weight class. Now, if they're a super heavyweight, you don't really have to worry about anything, right? They're gonna be eating, they're gonna be happy, they're gonna be able to be successful, but you still, even with supers, have to tell them, what are they gonna eat after weigh-ins? What are they gonna eat before they compete? What are they gonna eat in between snatch and clean and jerk? And I think that all of these things are a key factor. So understanding that body weight principle is really, really important. And utilizing our example here, I'm down at Pan Am's with Haley. Haley's walking around typically around 50 and a half, 50 kilos, somewhere in there. So her cut's not horrible down to 49 kilos, but we've got to know where that body weight is, how much she's drifting overnight, how much she gains throughout the day, where is she at within her cycle, within her menstrual cycle, how that impacts her, what kind of food changes the way her body reacts during her menstrual cycle. And so it's really, really important to comprehend the entire big spectrum when we're talking about that body weight factor. Fortunately with us here, she's been walking around at 49 to 50 kilos, 49 and a half to 50 kilos now. And so last night she was done 49.9 after we had a decent meal. She actually felt pretty stuffed, and then woke up this morning, she's at 49 flat. She lost an entire kilo. That typically tells me that when you're drifting that much weight overnight, you're in pretty good shape. Your body's responding really well. Your body's recovering really, really well to specific factors. And I think that that's a really key determinant, but you've got to understand where your athlete's body weight is, how they're responding to different foods, and that's gonna help them achieve their goals. So piggybacking off of the body weight aspect, you've got to know what kind of nutrition they respond really well to. You've got to know what types of food they're used to, and then how they respond to those foods, and then how they can compete and lift with those specific foods. So when you're in a foreign country, or if you're traveling all around the US, you might not have access to the standard food that that individual is consuming, and you've got to prepare for that. You've got to sit there and say, all right, hey, we got to pack this ahead of time. We got to put this in our luggage. We got to make sure that all this is okay. Or when you arrive somewhere, you've got to look for it. That's a really, really key factor. If you have somebody who's got allergies, or they don't respond well to specific types of food, and then they go somewhere and they're eating that, they're not gonna feel good. So the nutrition aspect is paramount. You've got to plan ahead. What are you gonna be eating when you're a week out? And it's gotta be also normal, standard stuff where it's like, hey, when they're 4 weeks out, they're eating this, and they're still eating that when they're a week out, and they're still eating that when they're 3 days out. And I think that that's one thing that a lot of people change. They'll start to get close to a meet and they'll start to get a little bit stressed, and it's like, hey, I gotta change this, I gotta eat this, I gotta try that. Instead, it's gotta be, no, stick to what you're used to, stick to that normal food, stick to normalcy. You don't wanna change too much, because now the body's gonna have to adapt to that change. Make it sensible, make it normal, and then finally have that game plan. What are they gonna eat the night before? What are they gonna eat the morning of? What are they gonna eat just before weigh-ins, or what are they gonna eat immediately following weigh-ins? How are they gonna rehydrate? How are they gonna feel a little bit better? And then what are they gonna eat an hour out from their first attempt? What are they gonna eat in between snatch and clean and jerk? All of these things are really, really important to factor in when you want to plan for optimal success. Okay, that fourth and fifth key factor, I think these sort of go hand in hand, is you've gotta have cues. Okay, so that's the fourth thing, is you've gotta have an established means of cueing your athlete. And a lot of coaches will sit there and just randomly throw cues out on game day or on competition day that have no bearing on what they've done over the past. And so what I like to do is that last 4 weeks, I might have a pool of 4 or 5 cues for each lift. And then 2 weeks out, it's basically gonna be 2 cues over and over and over again. And then I might throw in one random one that not random, but one that they've known from the past that has worked. But it's almost always going to be a directional cue. So, knees back off the floor, and then a feeling based cue. So that feeling might be, hey, feel the heels push into the floor. So now that is a little bit of a directional cue as well, but it's having that direction and having that feeling established for each lift. So establish those 2 main cues that you can utilize to familiarize your athlete with the scenario and with the situation that they're competing in. And that's the big factor here, is it's got to be familiar. And when you're traveling all over the world, it can't be, right? It's hard. But all those little things can keep it more familiar. Same thing with that game plan. When you have 2 game plans established, and that's what I would recommend, is you sit down, you've got those prescribed attempts laid out, and those attempts are gonna be this, or those attempts are gonna be this. But then the warm-up is almost the exact same, and you've got an audible position. So you've got, maybe it's the second to last warm-up, maybe it's the last warm-up. That's where you would call the audible position. So now you can sit there and say, all right, when this number is hit, if this happens, we go here. If this doesn't happen, we go here. And in training, you've practiced both scenarios. So your athlete is prepared to go this, this, this. So in Haley's case for the snatch today, it's gonna go either 80, 83, 85, or it's gonna go 80, 82, 84. The warm-ups are gonna be the exact same, but then it's gonna be based around her 77 and her first attempt. That's gonna determine where we're rolling. And that's gotta be the same way in the clean and jerk. So now we're taking those cues and we're establishing what those cues are gonna be, but then we're also taking those cues and saying, all right, during the cues, this is the game plan. This is when I'm giving her the cues in the game plan at these attempts. At this attempt, this is when I'm backing off the cues and just letting her go so that she can worry about herself, and I am not part of the whole scheme. I'm just sitting back trying to guide her. And if I see something, I'll bring it up. But for the most part, there comes a point where the coach just has to back up and be supportive. That's all we've got to worry about. So having that game plan laid out, having those cues established, that's going to be the key factor behind how your athlete can follow through with success. If you've done everything leading up to this and you've done these schemes in practice, you've done these schemes in training, it's going to help the athlete be familiar with those attempts in the competition. So it all goes back to making sure everything's familiar, the stress is diminished, everything's taken care of as far as you can possibly imagine, and now it's up to the athlete to execute and to do everything that they know they're capable of doing. So if you need help learning how to coach at elite competitions, if you need help learning how to coach Olympic weightlifters at any competition, click on the link down below. We've got a course designed specifically for coaches and athletes to learn how to handle coaching at various competitions. If you want more information behind coaching Olympic weightlifters, click on this card right here. Until next time, guys, peace.